In today's video, we're looking at a variety of NHL topics, including some rumors around the latest contract negotiations for Leon Draisaitl, as well as some other Edmonton Oilers news involving Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, and Evander Kane. Where do things stand with contracts for Holloway and Broberg, and will Kane be ready for the next season? Plus, we're going to look at a hockey news article taking a look ahead to next year's crop of free agents. What does the future hold for Mitch Marner and John Tavares in Toronto? We're going to take a look at one author's opinion on how things go. Plus, we know that Minnesota has been in the loop regarding Patrick Laine. We're going to take a look at another article on how a trade might work and what the return might be if they pull it off with the Blue Jackets. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things I want to take a look at here today. First up, though, I want to take a look at this day in hockey history. It was 29 years ago today that the Quebec Nordiques were officially rebranded. Of course, it was 29 years ago this summer that they were officially moved from Quebec to Colorado, which happened about 2 months earlier. But of course, on this day in August of 1995, they were officially rebranded. The new logo was revealed and the new name and everything. So it kind of, even though the team was already gone out of Quebec, we didn't know officially what they were going to be called or, what the logo was going to look like or anything of that nature. So it was a big day for Avalanche fans to kind of get an idea what their team was going to be called, what the logo was going to look like. Just another sad day, kind of rubbing in the wounds, if you will, for the fans of the Nordiques. And to make matters worse, in their first season, 1996, the Stanley Cup champions were the Colorado Avalanche. Their first year down there, they win the Cup. So if they could have held on and stayed in Quebec even just one more year, the Quebec City would have been able to be a part of being a Stanley Cup championship city. So it's a real unfortunate turn of events for fans of Quebec, and it's been that long since they've been trying to get their team back. I know there's lots of whispers and rumblings about future expansion. Will Quebec City get another opportunity? They've had a new arena built and in place for some time now. Obviously the NHL seems reluctant to go there. I personally would love to see it happen. Obviously, the Colorado Avalanche in the beginning, in its early days, there wasn't really, you could look back and see why the team moved and how it made sense and all that. But if you really look at the early days of the franchise in Colorado, it wasn't all that stable just yet. Like if you watch the documentary Saving Sakic, which I know wasn't all that great, but it kind of gives you a look behind the scenes on the business side of things and the financial side of that team when they almost lost superstar Joe Sakic to an offer sheet to the New York Rangers. So kind of goes to show it took a while for that Avalanche team to be really financially stable and secure. So it's been 29 years. Hopefully it's not too many more before Quebec City gets another opportunity to call the NHL home. Taking a look at some other NHL stuff today, we got a variety of things to talk about when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers. We've got the word on Evander Kane. Apparently, because we knew that Evander Kane was battling a sports hernia, we knew he was going to need surgery. There was some talk that he may not be ready for the start of the season. Could he go on LTIR? Could the Oilers look to trade him? Could he even be healthy enough to really factor that in? All kinds of things around Kane. Not so much in the last little bit here, but when the season first ended, right after the Stanley Cup final, there was a lot of talk about Kane and how the Oilers could handle that and how it would affect everything else. And right now, the word is that he will be ready for training camp. In fact, he's likely going to be ready ahead of training camp to take part in the captain skates, which usually the captain skates usually begin earlier in September, usually about a week or two, sometimes a couple weeks before training camp. So if he's going to be able to take part there and be ready to go, I don't really think that putting Evander Kane on a long-term injury reserve to start the season doesn't sound like it's really going to be an option. So clearly, the other thing with Kane is there is reports of some other teams being interested in acquiring him, but he does have a full no move clause, and he has to play ball with them in order to move that contract. And according to the latest sources here, a lot of the Oilers news has been coming from the podcast I was referring to there before. The Oilers-based podcast is saying that their sources are saying that Evander Kane has no intentions of waiving. He wants to be an Oiler. He's invested in staying in the city, in the team, and he likes it there. And has no intentions of wanting to leave. So, if that's the case, Kane's not going to be traded. Won't be able to be traded, and he'll be likely to start the season. So it's going to, obviously a healthy Evander Kane helps this team anyways, to be honest, but it's going to force another move. We know that Holloway and Broberg still need contracts. The latest intel there suggests that they are expected to make sure that they're going to be signed before camp. The podcast I'm referring to here says that they're going to be expected to sign within the next week or so. Both looking at 2-year deals, somewhere around $1 million or a little bit over. Now, the Oilers are going to have to create some space to do that, so they're going to have to make a move. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to do that. There's been lots of talk about a defenseman, either Brett Kulak or a Cody Ceci being your most likely players that do get moved. They don't really have a lot of options for waivers or players they can demote or things like that to create some necessary space. Now, it's always possible another player goes on waivers or something, but it just doesn't seem very likely. I think a guy like Ceci could probably benefit from a fresh start. To be honest, if we could move Darnell Nurse, it would solve a lot of things. But as much as we criticize that contract a lot, it's not his fault that he's overpaid. And secondly, it does sound from what we heard from the Oilers and their players throughout the playoffs, he's an extremely well respected and liked teammate, big in that room. So I don't think that the top guys on that team want anything to do with Nurse being moved either. So some interesting things ahead for Edmonton. And of course, the Leon Draisaitl contract extension. Of course, negotiations are definitely underway. We got confirmation of that about a week ago after Stan Bowman's had a chance to settle in as general manager. We did hear that he had started conversations with Draisaitl's agent and that they were, in the early stages of that. Of course, we didn't have a whole lot to report. Right now, it's still, the intel says that he wants an 8-year deal and that he's looking for around, if he were to leave Edmonton, he would be expected to get at least $14 million per season. It's expected that he's willing to obviously give them a bit of a discount, maybe go down to about 13. I don't know, 13 for what the way the market's trending, and you look at the top names right now and who's making the most money. I honestly think with the rising cap, that $14 million wouldn't be that crazy even for him to ask for Edmonton. Never mind the open market. I don't know. We'll see. Draisaitl and McDavid and Bouchard, there was reports from the same people a few weeks ago saying that all three were in agreement that on their next contracts they were going to make sure that they did not take too much, that they're going to try to be team friendly within reason to make sure they leave enough money kind of on the table that the team can be surrounded with good quality depth so that they have a better chance to win. Their goal here is not just to get paid well and appropriately, but to make sure that they can contend for the Stanley Cup for multiple years in the future. So we'll see. The Draisaitl number is going to be a big number. There's no doubt he's going to be the first one to get the contract done between himself and McDavid, and you can throw Bouchard into the mix there as well as being very important. So we'll see. There's no pressure point. There's no rush for Leon to get this contract done. Maybe it drags into a training camp. Maybe it even drags into the first part of the season. It's really not that big a deal. He's under contract for the coming year. It's not like it's a case of, it has to get done or he can't play or something like that. So I don't know how quickly it's going to come together. But like I said, the latest intel says 13 and a half is what he's willing to give Edmonton, but he would expect 14 and a half on the open market. So we'll see where things go over there. I don't know. I honestly think he could justify getting 14 at Edmonton, but that's not my call. We'll see where things go on that front. Now, there's also a Hockey News article taking a look at next year's crop of pending unrestricted free agent players. It looks at a variety of them. A couple of the ones that I found very interesting, of course, were Toronto. Now, of course, it touched on Draisaitl as well because he is theoretically still pending unrestricted free agent next year. Obviously looked at some Avalanche players too, like Rantanen, and then the Leafs like Marner and Tavares. The author of this Hockey News article goes on to say that when it comes to Mitch Marner, it's pretty clear that whether you're looking at him being traded, him being extended, or nothing happening at all and him walking as a free agent next year, that all three options still seem to be very much possible and on the table, and that they found his situation very difficult to predict. I mean, like I said before, we've heard all the things from the Leafs management and ownership ahead of the getting really into the busy part of the offseason, and all things on the table, the way they were going on, it sure made it sound like they were willing to shake things up. And just because they didn't do a major shakeup, the forward group is largely the same. The core four is identical. No changes there. It doesn't mean they didn't seriously try. At the end of the day, there's lots of conversations that we don't always get wind of. Lots of trade talks happen. Sometimes we get rumors and rumblings that a deal was close and it didn't happen. We don't always find out, or sometimes we find out really far down the road. So we can't say with absolute certainty that they did not try. But nothing has changed in that regard. So Marner it's a tough read. I think a trade seems to be pretty unlikely at this point. I mean, you never know. I guess an in-season trade is not completely, impossible, but it just seems unlikely. You never know, right? I mean, you get a team that has a bad start and needs to shake things up. Maybe they call Toronto and something works out that Marner is involved and he decides to wave and go. You just never know. But it seems less likely. We know that Marner's agent is notorious for encouraging his clients to explore free agency. So, yes, is the situation tough to read right now? Could it go any of those scenarios? I really think it's possible. In all honesty, I don't really think it's likely, not anytime soon, that we're going to see a Marner extension. If for some reason Marner does extend in Toronto, and I'm still not convinced I think it's the least likely outcome, but if it does happen, I think it's most likely, I would say, going to happen late in the season, or maybe after the playoffs, before free agency starts. I honestly think the only way that they'll really want to make a push to re-sign him is he's got to show a different outcome in the playoffs. He needs to be able to score the big goals. He needs to be able to, obviously, not only that, but give them a contract negotiation that works for the team as well, and not handcuff them so badly like they have, the four of them have, overall. Clearly, not to say, I'm not saying none of them are worth the money, but they kind of handcuffed themselves when they brought in Tavares. If an outside player like John Tavares was going to get over $11 million, then obviously they weren't taking any less money to stay there and be the homegrown talent. So, like I said from day one, that contract kind of set them up to not really have any leverage on those young players as they were, graduating into their second and third contract. So, at the end of the day, Marner could very well end up doing a variety of things right now, but I honestly think the most likely scenario is that he does leave via free agency, and that, unless there's something drastic changes. Like if we get into next year, next season, they get into the playoffs, and all of a sudden you get Mitch Marner playing a different style of the game, and he's, maybe he's blocking shots and doing more of the dirty work that you want to see from him, and having more desperation, and just, kind of doing the things that they need to do, and they go on a deep playoff run. Well, then maybe management changes their mind and says, okay, he understands how to win now. Maybe we can win with this guy, and they end up extending him. That's, to me, the best case scenario for him to stay. Otherwise, I think it's more likely that he plays out the season and then he ends up departing via free agency. But this article also predicts that John Tavares, who was, of course, look at how the fanfare around him and during his free agency, of course, when he signed with the Leafs, and they said they're predicting now that he will leave Toronto with a lot less fanfare than he came in, and obviously end up taking his services to another team in free agency to kind of probably finish out his career. I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of Tavares staying, but I think the main way that the Leafs are going to be interested in re-signing him is that he has to sign for a lot less money. Like, I think he'd have to come in around, probably $4 to $5 million for maybe 2 or 3 years. And if he wants more than that term or money, then I don't think they're going to do it. So realistically, the Toronto Maple Leafs could be an extremely interesting team next offseason. Of course, like I said, this could kind of be more of a last dance scenario for that group of forwards to get the job done. And if it's not a deep playoff run, then I do think, like I said, that those two guys have a better chance of leaving than staying. And if they do go, that's going to give the Leafs an extremely big opening with their cap and in the forward group that you never know. Maybe we could see a massive trade or a massive signing of a different free agent player that hits the market, right? So, they're going to be a very, very, very interesting team to watch throughout the season, as those two guys might be playing their final season as Leafs. And then what happens next from there, which is going to be a variety of storylines. So it's going to be a big thing that we follow all year long, no doubt. And lastly, I want to talk about Patrik Laine. There's a new article from the Hockey Writer site by Jesse Lynch looking at the Laine to Minnesota. We do know from reputable reporter Michael Russo that the Wild are definitely interested, and Bill Guerin was expected to have conversations with Laine this past week or the week coming. They weren't really clear when it was expected to happen, but sometime soon. May have happened already. And he goes over this article kind of outlining what he feels could be a way to get the deal done. Now, he goes on to say that Columbus, as much as they've made it known that retaining 50% is not really something they want to do, they're not going to probably have a choice when it comes to Minnesota if they do a deal there to retain something. He suggested 33%, which would knock the Laine contract down to around $5.8 million, possibly involving a third team to retain a little bit more, knocking it down further, and that maybe the return could involve a player like Marco Rossi. We know Rossi would be a great fit in Columbus. We know they're looking for young players that can play right away and fit in well with their rebuild, and he certainly fits that description. He's young, but he's not super young. He's got a couple of years of experience now and has started to come on with his development and taking steps forward, so he could be, a potential good piece there that might be intriguing to them. And then it also recommends a draft pick. So Rossi and a pick for Laine with double retention through a third party is what this article suggested for Minnesota to get him on their team. And that could be the case, but to be honest, they might like Rossi. Rossi's been a player that's been in the rumor mill. Wouldn't be shocking if they considered something like that. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if a goalie like Philip Gustafsson was involved. Gustafsson's making a little bit more money, signed a little bit longer, and he's also been on the rumor mill as well as being somebody who could be moved. We know Columbus doesn't really have their long-term goaltending sorted out, and it's probably hopeful, I guess, that Elvis Merzlikins plays better this year and can get moved. That sounds like the plan from Don Waddell. So he might need a guy like Gustafsson to come in and have an opportunity to kind of take the reins if they do move Elvis. So maybe that, to me, is a more likely scenario. So there's definitely pieces in Minnesota, I think, that would intrigue Columbus in a potential trade. But Don Waddell will definitely have to eat a decent amount of money for it to work, given Minnesota's cap situation. And like I said, we do have confirmation of the Wild being an interested party. This article just kind of goes over their opinion of a trade if it were to happen. I think it's possible. But I do kind of like my own idea a little bit better, thinking that it might make more sense to go for a goaltender rather than a young forward like Rossi, who I know he's been in the rumor mill. I know the Wild may move him, but I think they might want a different type of player back if they're going to do that. I don't think they want something quite, because Laine does come with some risk, right? There's no doubt. We can't deny that. So let me know what you think on Laine, the future of Tavares, Marner, as well as all the Oilers stuff in today's video down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.